Hey everybody, it's Mike from JinbuPal back again with David to talk about his progress using the brand new JinbuPal app. So if you haven't been following along with us up until this point and you want to go back to the beginning of this series, check out the link in the top of the video and down in the video description to go back to the first video in this series. We're following along every week for a total of 90 days to see how quickly David can become really comfortable with Chinese characters using the new JinbuPal app. So yeah, let's talk with David and see where you're at this week. So how's it been going?
Oh, that's pretty good. I was definitely a lot more diligent this week, just in terms of keeping up with my studies. Let me pull up my stats. Can you see it?
Yeah.
So you'll notice, I think last week I was around 61%, or I might have been right around 62%. This week, I was a lot more diligent day by day kind of studying, and what I was focused on was my tones. So you can see a big jump just in the amount of my JinbuPal score as it relates to knowing tones for characters. And I think I have my history pulled up here. Recently it was just a lot of going back through a lot of the, high frequency characters that I kind of knew the pinyin and meaning for, but hadn't necessarily mastered the tones yet. So yeah, some progress on that front. I've been doing a lot of reading, and I found that like some days, instead of like starting with picking my 7 characters that I want to learn, I literally just go straight to an article online and start just like attacking sentences. And through that, I will I'll find characters that I didn't know, or characters I didn't know the tone for, and then just go in and check those off. So
Nice.
I'm trying to find a good
I
example.
noticed the Xianggang there. There you go.
Yeah, so I was reading about Hong Kong, and I didn't know those characters yet, and so I ended up just kind of checking those off.
Yeah.
So it's been pretty interesting, just like using my reading to kind of guide my study practices, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. That's exciting because I mean you're getting to the fun part of it where when the reading starts guiding it, then you're learning something else in the process of it, So
Yeah.
that's cool.
Trying to see if I can find something that does this one have. It's funny because some articles don't have the side by side, which I really like. So I like to try to find ones that do. There we go. Yeah, so I mean, as I have talked about, but I'll go and get the side by side going, and then just like find stuff that I either know or don't know, and say like, okay, like especially if it's something that's repeated a lot in an article, I might use that in my studies.
Yeah.
Um,
What do you feel like so when you step through that, do you kind of glance through the English first? Do you just start tackling the Chinese part of it, or kind of how are you going through that?
Typically, like I'll open up an article. I'll probably start with the Chinese first, just like the first paragraph when I'm like feeling like refreshed and like ready to dive into it. I'll try to like tackle that. I mean, I don't really. I found myself actually like going back and reading through a lot of the grammar articles that I was kind of just skimming over in the beginning, because even though there are a lot of similarities in terms of sentence structure with English and Chinese, a lot of times like I'll be able to recognize the words, and obviously I have Zhongwen going, so like I can see what all the meanings are, but then like even with the English side by side, I don't quite get it, and so I'm trying to go back and reinforce a lot of those points. Did you like
Yeah.
have similar type of
I, I would
experience?
definitely say so. And there's certain times where you might come across less in terms of all the different grammatical usages of words and characters. You might run across less commonly used ways of using something, and it can be particularly confusing at first. And I mean, there's still oftentimes some of those things that I'll come across that are confusing to me. Um, and So I think that's certainly the case. And this is kind of, it sounds like you're starting to personally feel that kind of sense of this network building of managing. It's like you're spinning plates, you're spinning I'm learning the characters and the tones, and I'm reading, and, oh, I need to go back and, do some more, studying on my grammar. And it's multiple different tasks that you're kind of managing all at once. But the more that you're enjoying it through these articles and stuff, that, because you mentioned before that you weren't super motivated to go and read the grammar, and it's like, well, why would you if you're only doing flashcards? It's kind of,
Yeah.
you don't feel that motivation because you don't see the need for it. But I think that you're probably reading the grammar now at this point because you're motivated to actually understand the text, for a sake of feeling like you're accomplished in the Chinese sense of it, but also because you're picking content that you're interested in. So I would say that, I mean, yeah, I definitely encounter the same thing. And, still to this day, sometimes if I have encounter, um, on fairly low frequency grammatical structures. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And I think that it is kind of challenging sometimes with complex sentences that I'll come across. And so sometimes I find myself like I'll start trying to read the Chinese, um, and then we'll like read the English to make sure I understand kind of what I was looking at, um, and then I will kind of read down the page in English, and a lot of times it's like broken up into paragraphs, and there might be like a sentence that's like seems like easier to digest. And so
Yeah.
when I see that type of sentence that like doesn't have a lot of clauses in it or whatever, then I like try to hop over and find that same sentence in Chinese and try to tackle
Yeah.
it there. So I feel like I don't know Chinese enough to really sit down and like read through it all in one go, but
Yeah.
I'm definitely like finding sentences that are easier to parse and tackle those, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, I would agree. I say I do the same thing sometimes I mean, I probably even do the same thing when I'm reading an article in English. I mean, I'm like, I read a few paragraphs and then I'm like, all right, where's the TLDR? And I get the same thing with reading a Chinese article because,
Yeah.
I get to a point sometimes where I'm like, okay, I'm kind of bored of this topic. What's next? And I will sometimes go and hunt for something. Um, if I'm just, because I'm still I still have to put in a little bit of conscious thought to fully read through a sentence, whereas in English you could flash something up on a screen and you would catch what it said almost instantaneously, so
Yeah.
there's a little bit of a difference there. So sometimes it can be easier to pick selectively when you're at that point, like, just give me the gist of this, I'm just going to skim. You will kind of be drawn to really, um, sentences that maybe only include words that you already know from your quick, immediate assessment of glancing through. So yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of what else I've been doing. Still using the Pinyin Trainer. I know this exists, and I need to find a good tool that does it, but or like at least just build my own process using JinbuPal or something else. A way to like kind of like a trainer for reading the Pinyin and then like saying it out loud. Does that make sense? So like there's certain Pinyin that like the way that it's spelled out phonetically in English, it makes sense sort of, or like
Yep.
I've studied it enough that I kind of know it, but there are others that I see it and I like try to say it and then it's like I'm completely off. So just
Yep.
training I'm sure over time I'll just kind of pick it up, but finding
Got you.
cool to train that sense of like, okay, if I read this Pinyin, this is how the SHO sound kind of makes in Mandarin or stuff like that.
Yeah. And so you want to be able to do that natively, like through the trainer that you have in the article. Is that what you're saying?
In the article or just separate. So like the
Gotcha.
Pinyin Trainer app that I'm using right now, when it goes to a new flashcard or whatever, it sounds it out for you, and then you have to pick like you have to pick which tone it is, 1, 2, 3, or 4.
Yeah.
Right? So I want a way to show me like, here's tone 3 of this Pinyin, how like say it in your head or say it out loud, and then and then you hit the button and it'll tell you what it is.
Gotcha.
Just so that I get more comfortable with all of the different sounds, I guess.
Yeah. And I think a lot of that comes also with you get to a pretty high level of recognition as well as knowing words to where you might, for me, it would come when, say, I started getting a teacher that I met with, once a week for an hour. And I would notice those differences in some of the differences in my pronunciations when I would realize that I couldn't notice the difference between hers. And I realized it was because I wasn't perfectly pronouncing.
Mm-hmm.
And so in my head, I didn't know the difference between, say, like ju and ju. And I would say ju, meaning ju, and it was, very unclear to her what I was saying. And so it was the feedback of it being known that I was not being understood. And then also the similarities that I'd have on the other end was that I would hear her saying, Thai and Thai, 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 and I would have a lot of difficulty telling the difference between those sometimes. And so, yeah, a lot of that just converges over time with especially real world usages of trying it out with people and learning from, particularly when they can't understand you in a very like clear manner, like, hey, I have absolutely no clue what you're saying. Then it's like, okay, I'm clearly making a mistake here.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess I'll get to that point.
Well, we can try out some conversations sometime soon.
Yeah, definitely.
But cool. Yeah, you got anything else?
I think that's about it. Yeah, week 7, still chugging along.
Good stuff. Well, yeah, so we'll wrap it up this week. Any watching, make sure to check back next week. And we've been posting these every Thursday. Check back to see David's progress and see what it might be like for you also using JinbuPal. Also, make sure if you enjoy this video and you want to keep seeing more like it, make sure to give it a like and hit the subscribe button. And also check out our website, JinbuPal.com, where we have tons of other blog posts and other information to complement everything that you'll find on this YouTube channel. And eventually you'll be able to sign up for the JinbuPal app through that website. So thanks for watching, everybody, and we'll be back next week. So yeah, good to see you, David, and we'll talk next week.
All right, man. Talk to you later.